Welcome to Miss Scarlett. Subscribe and don't miss out on Patreon. Have fun! A sleek black suit, its darkness almost ceremonial, rested on the bedspread, a stark contrast to the room's warmth. Oakley stood transfixed, his fingers unconsciously tapping a nervous rhythm. The price tag, still attached to the cuff, fluttered like a cruel joke. It was a significant investment his father had made, marking Oakley's transition into adulthood. "Oakley, what's keeping you? Put it on!" His father's voice echoed from the other room, impatient but filled with pride. With a resigned smile, Oakley stepped closer. "Okay, Pops." Standing before the mirror, he adjusted the midnight blue tie, hating how it choked him. Everything about the reflection seemed wrong. The broad shoulders emphasized by the tailoring, the straight lines, the severe angles. It wasn't him. It had never been him.
"Let me see,"
his father said, pushing the door open. His eyes lit up. "Now that's what I call a man. 21 looks good on you, son." He clapped Oakley's shoulder. "You'll wear this to the family dinner on Saturday. Your grandmother will be so proud." Oakley forced a smile.
"It's really something."
After his father left, Oakley tore off the suit, folded it carefully, and placed it back in its box. He sat at his computer, opening the browsing history he always deleted, navigating to the page he'd visited dozens of times, but never had the courage to proceed past. His grandmother's birthday card lay on the desk, containing 5 crisp $100 bills.
"For whatever makes your heart sing,"
she'd written. If only she knew. With trembling fingers, Oakley selected the red satin cocktail dress in the shopping cart, entered his payment information, and, before he could second-guess himself, clicked Purchase. 3 days later, the package arrived while his father was at work. Oakley carried it to his room as if it contained explosives, locking the door behind him. He opened the box slowly, breath catching as he lifted the dress. The satin caught the light, shimmering like liquid fire. Standing before the mirror again, Oakley slipped out of his jeans and t-shirt. He'd researched enough to know that the dress would fit differently than he might expect, that his body would need adjustments to create the silhouette he envisioned. With careful movements, he pulled the dress over his head, letting it fall around him. The person in the mirror was someone new, someone who had been waiting to emerge. With shaking hands, Oakley smoothed the fabric over his hips, turned to see how it clung to his frame. It wasn't perfect. Nothing could be on a first attempt, but it felt right in a way the suit never had.
"Eliana,"
he whispered to his reflection. The name he'd chosen months ago, the one that felt like coming home.
"This is who you really are."
Over the next weeks, Oakley, Eliana when alone, developed a ritual. Each day after her father left for work, she would lock her bedroom door, apply the minimal makeup she'd managed to purchase, slip into the red dress, and practice walking in the low heels she'd hidden in the back of her closet. The internet became her lifeline. Late at night, Eliana would join chat rooms and forums where others like her shared their stories, their triumphs, their fears. "I don't know how to tell my father," she typed one evening. "He's been raising me alone since Mom died. Everything he does is to make me the man he thinks I should be." Responses flooded in with advice, encouragement, and warnings to be careful. One username kept appearing with particularly thoughtful replies. Rose Petals 83. "Safety first," Rose Petals 83 wrote. "Make sure you have a plan before coming out. Not everyone reacts well at first." Eliana messaged Rose Petals 83 privately. "How did you know?" That you weren't who everyone said you were? The response came minutes later. I always knew, but I didn't have the words until I was older. It was like wearing someone else's skin. Everything felt wrong until I acknowledged who I really was. Then, even when things were hard, there was this sense of truthfulness, like I could finally breathe. That night, Eliana cried herself to sleep, tears of recognition, of being understood perhaps for the first time. The family dinner loomed. Eliana stood in her room, staring at the suit on Saturday afternoon. Her father had laid it out that morning. Big night, he'd said. Grandmother doesn't visit often. Let's show her what a fine young man you've become. Eliana touched the suit jacket, thinking of the red dress hidden beneath sweaters in her drawer. The secret life she was living was becoming harder to compartmentalize. Each time she became Oakley again, it felt like stepping back into a cage. She dressed slowly, each button of the white shirt feeling like a betrayal. The tie strangled her. Looking in the mirror, she saw only a costume, a disguise that fooled everyone but herself. Downstairs, her grandmother was already seated in the living room. At 83, Eleanor Matthews remained regal, her silver hair swept into an elegant updo, her posture perfect. There's my grandson, she said, extending her hands. Let me look at you. Eliana crossed the room, taking her grandmother's cool, papery hands in hers. Eleanor studied her face for a long moment, her eyes sharp behind designer frames. Something's different about you, she said quietly.
You remind me of your mother.
Eliana's heart stuttered. I do? Around the eyes, she had that same searching look. Before Eliana could respond, her father entered, carrying a tray of drinks.
Mom, stop analyzing the boy. You always did that, even when he was little.
The dinner was excruciating. Her father dominated the conversation with stories of Oakley's achievements in manly pursuits. The football he'd played in high school, the summer he'd spent working construction, the business degree he was pursuing because that's where a man can make his mark. Eliana pushed food around her plate, feeling Eleanor's gaze on her throughout the meal. When her father stepped away to answer a phone call, her grandmother leaned forward. Your birthday money, she said. Did you find something that made your heart sing? Eliana swallowed hard. I think I'm still figuring that out. Eleanor nodded. Some songs take longer to learn, but when you find yours, don't let anyone silence it. She patted Eliana's hand. Not even your father. That night, after her grandmother had gone to her hotel and her father to bed, Eliana sat at her computer, trembling. She opened her private messages and wrote to Rose Petals 23. I need to know who I am, not just in secret, for real. The response arrived by morning. Then it's time to think about next steps, not just dressing the part, but living it. Are you ready for that? Weeks passed. Eliana began making small changes. She let her brown hair grow longer, explaining to her father that it was just a phase when he commented. She shaved her legs. She practiced softening her voice. Each small step felt like reclaiming a piece of herself. Online, she learned more from her growing circle of friends. Rose Petals 3, Rose, as Eliana now called her, introduced her to others who shared resources, experiences, and most importantly, hope. I found a support group in the city, Rose wrote one evening. Real people, not just usernames. I go every Thursday. Would you consider coming? The thought terrified and thrilled Eliana. My father would never let me. Do you need his permission? You're 21. Eliana stared at those words for a long time. She was an adult, yet she lived as if her father's approval determined her every move. The following Thursday, Eliana told her father she was attending a study group. She packed a bag with the red dress, the heels, makeup, and a brown wig she'd ordered, a close match to her own hair color, but longer, styled in soft waves. In the public restroom of a coffee shop 2 blocks from the community center where the group met, Eliana changed. Her hands trembled as she applied mascara, a touch of blush, lip gloss. The wig settled around her face, softening her features. The dress embraced her body. When she looked in the mirror, she saw herself, truly herself, preparing to step into the world for the first time. The walk to the community center was both the longest and shortest of her life. Each step in her modest heels felt like an accomplishment and a risk. People passed her on the sidewalk without a second glance. A man held a door open, saying, "After you, miss." Those 2 words nearly brought her to tears. Rose was waiting outside the building, a tall woman with auburn hair and a welcoming smile. "Eliana?" she asked, though her eyes said she already knew. "That's me," Eliana managed, her voice higher than Oakley's had ever been. "You're stunning," Rose said, embracing her. "The red is perfect with your brown hair. Are you ready to meet some friends?" Inside, a dozen people sat in a circle of chairs. Some were clearly early in their journeys, like Eliana. Others seemed completely at ease in their identities. The discussion leader, a woman named Beverly, with steel gray hair and kind eyes, welcomed Eliana without making her feel exposed. For 2 hours, Eliana listened, occasionally finding the courage to speak. No one judged. No one questioned. They simply accepted her as she presented herself. As Eliana, a woman finding her way. When it was time to leave, Rose walked her back toward the coffee shop. "Same time next week?" she asked. "I'll be here," Eliana promised. That night, after changing back into Oakley's clothes, she sat in her room, holding the wig in her hands. The division between her 2 lives was becoming unbearable. She couldn't keep pretending to be someone she wasn't. It was time to tell her father. She considered the ways it might happen, a formal sit-down conversation, a letter, bringing him to meet the group. None felt right. Her father was a direct man who valued honesty above all. If she was going to do this, she needed to be completely honest. A week later, Eliana woke with resolve. Her father would be home all day, a rare Saturday off. She dressed in Oakley's clothes one last time, feeling like an actress in a role she'd outgrown. At breakfast, her father read the newspaper while she pushed cereal around her bowl. "Dad," she finally said, "I need to talk to you about something important." He lowered the paper, eyebrows raised expectantly. "Everything okay? You're not in trouble, are you?" "No trouble, but it is serious." She took a deep breath. "Do you remember Mom's favorite saying? About how the greatest gift we can give others is our authentic self?" He set the paper down completely. "Where's this coming from?" "I need to show you something, and I need you to try to understand." Before she could lose her nerve, Eliana stood and walked to her room. She changed slowly, deliberately, into the red dress, applied her makeup with care, settled the brown wig into place. When she was ready as she'd ever be, she walked back downstairs. Her father was still at the table. When he looked up, his face went through a kaleidoscope of emotions: confusion, shock, anger, and something that might have been fear.
"What is this?"
he asked, his voice dangerously quiet. Eliana's knees threatened to buckle, but she straightened her spine. "This is me, Dad. The real me. My name is Eliana."
"This isn't funny, Oakley."
"I'm not joking. I've known for years, but I've been afraid to tell you. I'm transgender. I'm a woman." Her father stood so abruptly his chair fell backward.
"No son of mine is going to parade around in women's clothing. This is some kind of phase, or that liberal college has put ideas in your head."
"It's not a phase. This is who I am. Not in my house." He slammed his hand on the table. "Take that ridiculous outfit off, and we'll forget this happened." Eliana flinched, but held her ground. "I can't do that. I can't pretend anymore." Her father's face hardened.
"Then you need to leave until you come to your senses."
The words hit like physical blows, but somehow Eliana had expected them. She'd prepared for this possibility.
"If that's what you want." "It's not what I want,"
he said, his voice breaking slightly.
"What I want is my son back."
"Your son was never real," Eliana said softly. "She was always your daughter, trying to be what you needed." She turned and went back upstairs, changing not into Oakley's clothes, but into a simple blouse and jeans she'd hidden away. She packed quickly: clothes she could use, personal documents, the cash she'd been saving. Everything else could be replaced. When she came downstairs with her suitcase, her father was sitting in the living room, head in his hands. "Where will you go?" he asked without looking up.
"I've arranged to stay with a friend until I can find my own place."
He finally raised his eyes.
"Your grandmother's money. That's what you spent it on? Dresses and that?"
He gestured at her wig.
"On finding myself,"
Eliana corrected.
"She told me to spend it on whatever made my heart sing."
Her father stood. For a moment, Eliana thought he might embrace her, might say he understood. Instead, he walked to the window, turning his back on her.
"When you're ready to be Oakley again, you can come home."
Eliana picked up her suitcase. "Goodbye, Dad. I love you. I hope someday you can love me, too. The real me." Rose had offered her couch until Eliana could get settled. It wasn't ideal, but it was a start. As she walked to the bus stop, the sun warm on her face, Eliana felt a strange mixture of grief and liberation. She had lost her home, perhaps temporarily lost her father, but she had found herself. Over the next months, Eliana built a new life. She found a job at a small bookstore where the owner, a woman named Patricia, with vibrant silver hair and progressive views, accepted her without question. She continued attending the support group, where she began helping newcomers the way Rose had helped her. She moved into a tiny studio apartment, decorating it with secondhand furniture and touches that reflected her emerging style: soft throw pillows, framed vintage fashion illustrations, plants that thrived under her care. Each day that Eliana lived authentically strengthened her confidence. Her brown hair grew out enough that she no longer needed the wig, though she kept it as a reminder of her journey. She began hormone therapy, watching with wonder as subtle changes reshaped her features, softened her skin. Her father's silence was a wound that wouldn't heal. She sent him texts that went unanswered, letters that received no reply. On his birthday, she left a gift, a framed photo of her mother, on his doorstep with a card signed, "Your daughter, Eliana." Whether he kept it or threw it away, she never knew. Eleanor, however, was different. When Eliana finally gathered the courage to call her grandmother, the conversation was awkward, but not unkind. "I always sensed there was something you weren't saying," Eleanor said. "Does it make you happy, living as Eliana?" "Happier than I've ever been," she answered truthfully. There was a pause, then, "Well then, I suppose I have a granddaughter now. Will you visit me? Let me see who you've become?" The visit happened on a crisp October day. Eliana wore a burgundy sweater dress and boots, her brown hair styled in loose waves. She brought flowers, her grandmother's favorite lilies. Eleanor opened the door and studied her for a long moment. "You have your mother's eyes," she finally said. "Even more so now." Inside, over tea served in delicate cups that had belonged to Eliana's great-grandmother, they talked. Really talked, perhaps for the first time. "Your father is struggling," Eleanor said. "Not because he doesn't love you, but because he doesn't understand. He was raised to see the world in absolutes." "And you weren't?" Eliana asked. Eleanor smiled wryly. "I've lived long enough to know that life has very few absolutes. People are complicated. Love shouldn't be." Before Eliana left, Eleanor pressed an envelope into her hands. "I was saving this for your wedding, but I think you need it more now, for whatever steps come next in your journey." Inside was a check that brought tears to Eliana's eyes. "Grandma, this is too much." "Nonsense. It's exactly enough for whatever makes your heart sing now." A year passed. Eliana flourished in her authentic life. The bookstore became a full-time position with benefits. She made friends, real friends who knew her only as Eliana. She even went on a few dates, though none developed into serious relationships. Through it all, the silence from her father continued. Eliana stopped expecting a response, though she never stopped reaching out. Monthly texts, holiday cards. She kept him updated on her life, refusing to let his rejection erase her love for him. Then, on the morning of her 23rd birthday, her phone rang. The screen displayed Dad. Eliana's hand shook as she answered. "Hello?" "The suit doesn't fit anymore," her father said without preamble. His voice sounded older, rougher than she remembered. "What?" "The suit I gave you, for your 21st. I found it in your closet when I was looking at your things." There was a pause. "It wouldn't fit you now, would it?" Eliana sat down on the edge of her bed. "No, Dad, it wouldn't." Another silence. "Your grandmother says you're doing well." "I am. She showed me pictures of you now, with your brown hair longer. You do look like your mother." Tears welled in Eliana's eyes. "Dad, I don't understand it," he said quickly. "I don't know if I ever will, but your mother would be so disappointed in how I've handled this. She always said our job was to love you, not direct you." Eliana could barely speak. "I've missed you." "I've missed my child." He cleared his throat. "I was thinking maybe we could have coffee, somewhere public, neutral. You could explain things to me, if you want." It was more than Eliana had dared hope for. "I'd like that very much." They arranged to meet the following Sunday at a cafe halfway between their homes. When the day came, Eliana dressed carefully in a simple blue dress, applied minimal makeup, and drove with butterflies swarming in her stomach. Her father was already there, seated at a corner table, looking smaller somehow than in her memory. When he saw her, he stood awkwardly, hands flexing at his sides as if he didn't know what to do with them. "Hi, Dad," Eliana said softly. He nodded stiffly.
"I wasn't sure what to call you."
"Eliana. Or Ellie, if that's easier."
"Eliana,"
he repeated, testing it out. "Should we sit?" Over coffee that grew cold as they talked, Eliana explained her journey. Her father listened more than he spoke, his brow furrowed in concentration. When he did ask questions, they were earnest attempts to understand, even if some revealed how much he still had to learn.
"I keep thinking I failed you somehow," he admitted. "That if your mother had lived, she would have seen the signs, known what to do."
"You didn't fail me," Eliana assured him. "This isn't about anything you did or didn't do. It's just who I am."
"And you're happier now? Living as—"
He gestured at her.
"As myself? Yes. Even with all the challenges, I'm happier than I ever was pretending to be someone else."
He nodded slowly.
"That red dress, the one you showed me that day, was that the first
piece of women's clothing I owned," Eliana confirmed.
"I bought it with Grandma's birthday money."
A small smile touched his lips.
"She always did say you should follow your heart."
He reached across the table, hesitating before lightly touching Eliana's hand. "I can't promise I'll get everything right, but I'd like to try, to be in your life again." It was a beginning, imperfect, uncertain, but real. In the months that followed, they rebuilt their relationship step by careful step. There were missteps, times when her father used the wrong name or struggled to introduce her to old friends. But there were also triumphs. The first time he casually referred to her as "my daughter" without stumbling. The day he helped her move into a better apartment, carrying boxes without commenting on their contents. On Eliana's 24th birthday, her father and grandmother took her to dinner. They presented her with a small box wrapped in silver paper. Inside was a delicate necklace with a pendant shaped like a songbird. The card read, "For the woman who found her voice. With love, Dad and Grandma." Eliana fastened it around her neck, the cool metal settling against her skin like a promise fulfilled. In the restaurant's candlelight, she caught her reflection in a decorative mirror, the elegant woman in the burgundy dress with flowing brown hair and her mother's eyes, flanked by the two people who had known her longest, finally seeing her as she truly was. "Thank you," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "For seeing me." Her father reached across the table and took her hand.
"I'm sorry it took me so long to look."
Eleanor raised her glass. "To Eliana, for teaching us all that the bravest thing we can do is simply be who we are." 3 glasses clinked together in the warm light. Looking around the table at the faces of her family, imperfect, learning, trying, Eliana felt a sense of wholeness she'd once thought impossible. The red dress still hung in her closet, a reminder of where she'd started. But it was no longer a secret, no longer a costume. It was simply part of her story, the story of a woman who had found the courage to step into the light and claim her true self. And that, Eliana knew, was only the beginning.
Thanks for watching, my girlies! Be sure to check out Patreon for more!